Lots of positive vibes around the silver and black. Will the Raiders offense share those positive vibes? That plus more on Wednesday's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast for May 7th, 2025.
You are Locked On Raiders, your daily Las Vegas Raiders podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome in, Raider Nation, to another edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast. Thank you so much for making the show your first listen of the day. We definitely appreciate you. If you're catching the show wherever you find your favorite podcast, or you're checking us out by way of the YouTube page, you know we appreciate both. The show grows each and every day because of your support and the great job that my man Ari does behind the scenes, making sure we look good and sound good each and every day. So we shout him out. We appreciate him. He's on Twitter at Ari Produces. You can hit me up as well at your boy Q254. And if you want to be a part of the show, we've got the Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line at 707-654-4693. And as normal, we'll close out the show hearing from you. Calls, texts, great feedback. We'll get as much in as possible coming up in segment number 3. Segment number 2, we'll focus in on the Raiders offense. There was a really good thread on Twitter on Tuesday that was actually sent to me, directed in my attention, like, hey, Q, check this out. Let me know your feedback on it. Thought it was really good. There was a lot of really good arguments on why the Raiders offense should be a lot better than it was in 2024. And Raider Nation, trust and believe, the Raiders offense needs to be a lot better in 2025 than it was in 2024. We'll break that down. We'll talk about it, let you know where I got that coming up in segment number 2. Here in segment number 1, usually it's news and notes, and there's not a whole lot of news and notes to get to right now. So I did want to share what some of the national media is saying about the Raiders in the offseason, the draft, what they've done in free agency, just the way that this team has been operating under GM John Spytek and head coach Pete Carroll. We'll do that here in segment number 1 after I tell you about the title sponsor of the show, which is FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets. Win your first $5 bet wins. So on to the, like I said, news and notes part of the show that we do each and every day. Really just want to bring you some thoughts from a big-time national media member. That's Shireen Williams. She's from Pro Football Talk. She's a Hall of Fame voter. She's actually in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. I've known her for a very long time. She's been on many of my radio shows, whether it's ESPN Central Texas, Raider Nation Radio 920, or even ESPN. Just, like I said, a lot of credibility across the NFL. Been covering the league for a very long time. And she was a guest on my radio show the other day. And the thing about it is, I try to have like a national guest on. You know, usually I try to have a national guest on like one a day. Maybe if I don't get one on every single day, maybe 3 times a week, right? Just to get different perspective on whatever's going on across the NFL. When I do that, I also want to get their thoughts from a national point of view of what the Raiders are doing. It's easy for me to talk about the Raiders and see what they're doing and saying, yeah, man, these moves make sense, right? Everything looks good, sounds good, it's going to be good, right? Look, I thought that Antonio Pierce was going to be a really good head coach. Obviously, it didn't work out, right? Gave Josh McDaniels an opportunity to prove what he was going to be. Obviously, that didn't work out, right? I mean, you could talk about Rich Bisaccia. You could talk about John Gruden. I've been saying for a while that it feels like this is the most kind of cohesive, and the plan that's been put in place seems like it's being executed. This feels like it's correct. It feels like things are going in the right direction. But it's easy to get caught up in the sauce, especially when you're talking about a team every single day. So sometimes I like to do a little self-check of myself, right, to make sure that what I'm seeing or what I'm feeling is correct from many different angles. So that's why I always like to ask national media members their thoughts on what's going on. So Shireen was on my show just the other day, and I asked her a couple questions about the silver and black. And the first one was just about the GM, John Spytek, and Pete Carroll and the plan. And it feels like they have a plan and they're executing it. What is it about John Spytek and Pete Carroll? I know Spytek is a guy that's been known around the league for a long time, but it just seems like they had a real plan in place and really attacked it.
They really did, and you have to like what they did. And I just think Ashton Genty is going to be the real deal. I think he's going to be a great running back. They're going to be able to run the ball. I think, you know, their offensive line obviously looks like it's going to be really good. And you have the tight end after the pick last year was so good, Brock Bowers, and probably should have gotten more love to get second in the Offensive Rookie of the Year, I think, honors. I had him second, and I just think, you know, he had a historical year. It was an unbelievable year. It's too bad he finished second in that. I mean, I voted for Jaden Daniels and understand completely why he won, but what a year by Brock Bowers, and I just think he's going to keep getting better. So they had a plan in place. They improved their roster, much improved their roster this offseason from free agency to the draft and what they've done. It's been outstanding. Now, you know, are the results going to show up on the field? That's what we're going to find out. I mean, it's the toughest division in football.
Mm-hmm.
Like, who's going to forget who's going to finish first? Who's going to finish last in that division? Because every single team in that division got better. Maybe the Chiefs didn't get a lot better, but shoot, they still got Patrick Mahomes. So who's betting against the Chiefs to win the division? But every single team in that division got better. It's just such a good division. It's just tough. But I love what the Raiders have done this offseason. Now, I'd like to see them get maybe one more receiver. You know, I think the rookie's going to come in. I think he's going to be good for them. But maybe one more veteran receiver. Those guys, maybe after June 1st, would be a good time to pick up a veteran. There's still so many veteran receivers out there. I'd like to see him pick up one more veteran receiver just to have him in the room for some depth purposes.
Shereen Williams right there responding to my question about the GM and the head coach and the way that they're working together. Pete Carroll obviously has the resume to prove. The proof is there. The proof of concept is there as far as him being a really good head coach. John Spytek, first time being in the GM chair, but has been around it so long in Tampa Bay. The assistant GM knows what it looks like, knows what it sounds like, and it seems like he's executing. It seems like they're all on the same page. Now, again, it's early May, so they still got to go through rookie minicamp, which is coming up this weekend. Right, they've got to go through mandatory minicamp. They've got to go through training camp. They've got to get a 53-man roster, right? And then, oh, by the way, they got to go play the games. So there's still a long ways to go. But, again, you kind of hear what Shereen has to say there. Ashton Genty, the real deal. Brock Bowers loves him from even what he was able to do last year as a rookie. The roster, much improved from a year ago. Now, she did say, hey, you need to add a veteran wide receiver to the mix, right? Possibly after June 1st. That's something that my guy, Brother Marquise in the 305 Rep Miami said the other day when he called into my radio show talking about, just young guys helping out performing. He's like, take a little bit of pressure off the young guys. Add a veteran to the mix. Maybe that's a Keenan Allen. Maybe that's Amari Cooper. Maybe that's other. But you see that was, the suggestion right there from Shereen as well. Toughest division in football. Every team got better outside of Kansas City, but they've got Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid. So, it's tough to bet against those guys when they have those guys in place. But very detailed answer right there from Shereen on the Raiders. And so I thought that was great. So as we wrapped up the interview, I went back to the Raiders one more time to talk about Pete Carroll. Now, Pete Carroll is a guy that we did a lot of researching and deep diving on him before he got hired by the Raiders. And then afterwards, we continued to do that. And the one thing that continued to be the overall, consensus and agreement was that he did really well with young players. So I asked Shereen about him and his success with young players. Not only did she talk about that, but she also went on to talk about Tom Brady, John Spytek, and just really everywhere that the Raiders are right now as far as the organization, the way they're putting things together.
What is it about Pete Carroll that you see that just makes him go and really have so much success with young players?
He does, and he has, and I think he'll continue to do that this year, and I think you'll see a big change in the Raiders, the way they play, the competitiveness that they have this year. I just think, Tom Brady and Pete Carroll have brought some stability to that organization. They've brought a lot of credibility to the organization. They've steadied it out, their stability. I just really like what they've done with both of those moves. And then Spytek, obviously, with Brady getting him in there. I just think they've got that stability and credibility and all that stuff that you look for. And I think this is a team that's going to win eventually. It may not be this year. Like I said, they're in the best division in football. It's going to be really tough, and maybe it's not this year. But I think in the next 2 to 3 years, I think it's going to be a really good football team that's going to contend for a title.
Love what she said right there. Stability, credibility, will win soon. Possibly contend for a title in 2 to 3 years. Now, I don't want to, pump sunshine. I don't want to talk about rainbows and puppy dogs. I don't want to talk about unicorns and this, that, and the other, right? I don't want to sit there and send you any false narratives and be like, hey, man, look, the Raiders are going to win a Super Bowl in 2 to 3 years. Not going there, right? They've got to find a way to win games. They've got to get to winning side of things, winning ways. But again, when you hear someone that's got plenty of credibility in the business talking about what they're seeing from the Raiders from a distance, it gives you a good feeling, right? And again, this is someone that's got credibility, and their name means a lot. So they're not just going to say something, well, I'm on Q's show, and he's on Raider Nation Radio, so I got to say some great things about the Raiders. She don't give a rip about that. Trust me, right? When Rich Bisaccia wasn't hired to be the full-time head coach, she was very upset about it. Like, that was a bad decision. Should have stuck with Rich Bisaccia. She was very adamant about that. She's got a lot of respect for Rich. She's based in Texas. She knew him when he was a Dallas Cowboy special teams coordinator, said that was the right guy, and your team blew it. She had no problem coming on the radio saying that. So I don't want you to think that it's just someone that's trying to appease the masses, because that's not how she gets down. And really, all the national media that I have on, whether that's John McClain, whether that's Ari Mayrov, whether that's Omar Ruiz, right, Steve Weish, it doesn't matter. It doesn't. All the people that we have on are all credible, respectable people that carry a lot of weight and care about their names, and not just going to go out there and say anything just for the sake of doing something. So I thought that was some pretty interesting, some nuggets right there from Shireen Williams that I thought it'd be important to pass along. Obviously, I'm not going to do that all the time, but I think every once in a while it's good to hear how people think about your team. Coming up in segment number 2. Well, how good is it going to be? How positive is the conversation going to be when it comes to the Raiders offense? It wasn't very good in 2024. That's the easy way to sum it up. How good could it possibly be in 2025? We'll talk about that next on today's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast. Before we get to that, though, I do want to tell you about one of the great sponsors here on the show, and that is Skylight Calendar. You can say goodbye to sticky notes, scribble plans on the fridge, and overlapping calendar invites. The Skylight Calendar is here to bring clarity to the chaos and help families stay organized without the stress. This sleek digital display syncs with your existing calendars, Google, Apple, Outlook, and more, making it simple to track appointments, practices, dinners, and reminders all in one easy-to-see place. So no more excuses from your family and friends. I didn't know. I didn't see it. What? When did that get scheduled? Huh? I don't know what you're talking about. Nah, all those excuses are out the door. You can see your whole week clearly on a 15-inch HD screen, which helps you stay focused and less overwhelmed. How do you get involved in this? Well, right now, Skylight is offering all Locked On Raider podcast listeners $30 off their 15-inch calendars by going to skylightcal.com/NFL. That's skylightcal.com/NFL for $30 off your 15-inch calendar. That is skylightcal, skylightcal.com/NFL. All right, Raider Nation, here we go. Segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. We've got to get locked in to the Raiders offense. 2024, not very good. 2025, well, some will say the expectations are pretty high. And it's funny, this conversation actually was something that was sent my direction by way of Twitter. JT from the BK, that's at JT from the BK, goes by True on Twitter, sent me this message and said, hey, you should look at this thread. It's pretty good. I think this guy has some good arguments about why the Raiders offense could be really good in 2025. You should reach out to him, see if you can get him on your show. His name is Max Toscano. He goes by at Max Toscano1 on Twitter, does a lot of analytics, right? A lot of film breakdown. Just one of those guys that goes over a lot of film for multiple different teams and is able to break it down. So he said that he should be a guest on my radio show. He's going to be a guest on my radio show this afternoon at 3:30. But it was a very interesting little Twitter thread that he had that made me reach out because I found it to be intriguing. If you remember, the Raiders offense was not very good for multiple reasons, including their offensive coordinator, Luke Getsy, was terrible. Quarterback play wasn't very good, couldn't run the ball, right? There's a lot of reasons why the Raiders offense wasn't good, but they averaged 18 points per game and were ranked 27th in total offense. And so they were at 18.2 points per game. That's ranked 29th. Yards per game, 303.2, ranked 27th. Points per play, .290, that's 29th. Yards per play, 4.8, that's 28th. Third down conversion percentage, 34.82, that's 30th. Fourth down conversion percentage, 56%. That's 16th. That's actually their best number. Red zone scoring percentage for touchdowns, 48.89. That's 26th. Touchdowns per game, 1.8. That ranks 29th. So what does all that mean? Offense stunk. It was not good at all in 2024. That's how you win 4 games. I've said before, I think that the Raiders should be looking for around 8 wins in 2025. Go 8-9, first year under Pete Carroll. You feel like things are going in the right direction. You know that there's no more weapons on the team, and Chip Kelly is offensive coordinator. So Max says on this Twitter thread, and rock with me here, it's kind of lengthy, but it's some really good stuff. Running backs are so back. With light boxes defining NFL defenses, someone who can make tacklers miss in space and force defenses to pack the paint are once again extremely valuable. Just ask the Eagles. The Raiders drafted a special one. Obviously, he's talking about Ashton Genty, the number 6 overall pick. He goes on to say, putting Genty in a Chip Kelly run game is like giving the best driver the best car. The combination of soundness and creativity that has made the Commanders and Lions run game so dangerous is clearly what Spytek is after. It's funny when he said put the best driver in the best car, I thought about my homeboy Jason, little race car driver. I was like, man, I wonder what he would think being the best driver, being in the best car, how that would feel. But I understood exactly what Max was trying to get to when he said that. Like, could you imagine a guy who's a fantastic race car driver and you give him the very best car in the world? He can't lose. That's basically what he's saying. You're putting the best driver, Chip Kelly, in the best car, being Ashton Genty. He said the Raiders' offensive line is talented, but in combination with Michael Mayer at tight end, Brock Bowers at the F, and Jack Besh at the X, it'll be pretty positionless. Vegas has 8 credible blockers in the box on the field, which is important. They should be able to force teams to load the boxes or get run on. I'll stop right there. Can you imagine that? You have to make a decision as a defensive coordinator. What are we going to do? Pick your poison. Are you going to load up the box and try to stop Ashton Genty, or are you going to say, no, we're going to have a light box, and we're going to try to stop Brock Bowers. We're going to try to stop Jacoby Myers. We're going to try to stop Trey Tucker from stretching the field. We're going to try to stop Thornton from stretching the field. What are we going to do? And again, if they go and say, well, we're going to try to stop the run game first, like you saw Kansas City say that they were going to do against Saquon Barkley and the Eagles in the Super Bowl, well, then the other weapons are going to be open. And, oh, by the way, you have Geno Smith, who's a very competent quarterback that can get the job done. So Max goes on to say, with Bowers, Besh, and Myers, the Raiders have a legit group of pass catchers. How long has it been since we've heard that? The Raiders have a legit group of pass catchers. Says this all leads us to the main event, the quarterback who has become a legitimate star. Geno Smith's success is as sustainable as any quarterback in the league as he's covered up a truly abysmal situation a year ago. He processes at an elite level and is accurate as anyone with real compliment. He may go nuclear. So, again, a lot of high praise right there from Max Toscano on Twitter at Max Toscano1. He said the Raiders will have a top 10 offense and push for top 5. Again, similar to what we heard from Shireen when she's saying that the Raiders will, contend for a title in 2 to 3 years. I don't want to go there. I don't want to go there and get too high. You know what they say, don't get high on your own supply? I don't want to get high on my own supply. I don't want to be that guy where I'm just, floating around on cloud 9 like, oh, The Raiders are going to go from being the 27th offense to the top 5. Like, that's a big jump, right? Last year I thought the defense was going to be able to be in the top 5 just because I expected them to be elite. They clearly were not. So I'm not going there. I'm being very cautiously optimistic, which I think a lot of Raider Nation is doing. That's fine. That's not a problem. But when you think about it, okay, so where do I think realistic expectations and options should be for the Raiders offensively, given everything that Max just said, given everything I know about this team, given everything I know about Pete Carroll, and the X factor that not enough people are talking about, Chip Kelly as the offensive coordinator. I asked many different people. I asked John McClain on my radio show on Tuesday. I said, how creative do you think Chip Kelly is going to get with his offensive play calling? He said he's going to get as creative as his talent allows him to get, which got me excited because there's talent there on the offensive side. Right? There's no doubt about it. I asked Paul Gutierrez, who used to be at ESPN, now he's at Raiders.com. How creative do you think Chip Kelly is going to get? I think he's going to get very creative, something that Raider Nation hasn't seen since Hugh Jackson. And I would argue, and Raider Nation, I'd love to hear from you at 707-654-4693. Has there been a better offensive coordinator since Hugh Jackson? I don't really think so. Right, I know that the Raiders obviously had some good days early with Musgrave under Jack Del Rio. That was the 2016 season when they were a playoff team. We all know what happened to Derek Carr's ankle that year, and who knows how that could have shaken out. But honestly, I think Hugh Jackson was probably the most creative. You think about how he made Darren McFadden all of a sudden a really good running back, and obviously he got injured in the year where Hugh just said, "Hey, what do you like to run? Let's go ahead and showcase that." He made guys that were in the league as, wide receivers and other weapons. They weren't that great, but he was getting the most out of them, right? He was able to find traits in them where they could be good and kind of show off what they can do, and they was able to succeed with them. So not that this is a Hugh Jackson conversation, but I think that Chip Kelly is the best OC that the Raiders have had since Hugh Jackson with the ability to get creative, and that was something that Paul brought up to me. So I'm looking at if they were, the 27th ranked offense, total offense in 2024, I think they should be top 15. I'm not going to go top 10. I think that's being greedy. I'm sure not going to go top 5, but I think top 15 would be fine. And if you go back and look, the Rams were number 15 ranked offense a year ago. I think all of us would have taken a Rams offense, right? And they scored just over 21 points per game and about 331 yards per game. But they are 15th and made the playoffs. I think we would all take, now, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, I think we would all take the Rams rankings from a year ago. It wasn't all sunshine and rainbows all season long, right? Remember, there was even a part of the season where it looked like the Rams might be sellers at the trade deadline. Then all of a sudden they won a game. I think it was on Monday Night Football. They won a game, and they're like, wait, hold on. We're still in the thick of this thing, and we're getting guys back healthy. So I think the Raiders probably will struggle early on with their offense. It might not be clicking on all cylinders right away, but I feel like that they can work into this being a good, well-oiled machine. So if they make the jump from 27th to 15th, even if they're not quite at 24 points a game, but they're a little bit over 21, and they're able to get, 8, 9 wins, I think that that's a victory. I think, again, that goes back to what we've been talking about, this team going in the right direction. And, we had the call the other day about where do you see 8 wins at? Again, it's all about execution. It's not necessarily pinpointing the game. It's all about execution. It's all about those guys going out there, playing loose, understanding what they're supposed to do, and have really good coaching to help them succeed. It's all a big, it's all a big puzzle. But I think that it's very possible for this team to get to 8 wins, especially if they can get their offense around top 15. I think the defense is going to be good. Obviously, you need the guys to come back healthy, especially Christian Wilkins, Malcolm Kuntz. You're expecting guys like that. They've got to figure out their other cornerback position across from Jacorian Bennett. But outside of that, it feels like this team has a chance to, again, like I say, win 8 games this year. First one under Pete Carroll would be good. But one of the biggest keys is their offense and how much better they are than they were a season ago. Top 15, if you're where the Rams were a year ago, I think you're feeling pretty good about the direction that the team is going. What's on your mind? Your calls and texts are next as we close out the show, 707-654-4693. Before we get to that, though, I do want to tell you about the title sponsor of the show, and that is FanDuel. With the NBA playoffs in full swing, and they are in full swing, the Indiana Pacers ain't playing around, are they? Tyrese Halliburton's like, I'm overrated, huh? We'll show you. Every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments. Whether it's a game-winning shot like Halliburton had on Tuesday or a breakout player, there's never been a better time to get in on the action. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live. With live player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays, fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. So you can combine live prop bets mid-game based on how the action unfolds. You can get 200 bonus bets, add to your excitement if your first $5 bet wins. I mean, those are all elements and all reasons to get in on the action. And if you know who's heating up or you've been reading who's heating up, you can back it up with a same-game parlay. Right now, if you're new to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com, place your first $5 bet. If it wins, again, you'll get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Here we go, Raider Nation. Segment number 3 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Your calls and text draft that Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line, 707-654-4693. Let's start things off with a call from Raider Rich from the outskirts of Death Valley, calling to talk about wide receiver Jack Bech and also his realistic thoughts on the upcoming season. Here he is, Raider Rich.
Hey, Q. This is Raider Rich from the outskirts of Death Valley here in Searles Valley, California. I wanted to just kind of touch base with you a little bit on my take on a certain player, Jack Bech. That guy kind of reminds me of Hines Ward, or to go back as a Raider, Michael Crabtree. They all have like the same physical, body. Hines Ward was 6'1", 215. Crabtree was 6 foot 205. Bech is 6'2", 216. And seem like they're physical players. I think he's going to do good, with the story that he's got about his brother. I think that's an awesome story. Also, I was watching some stuff on the X, and some of the stuff that I saw was about DK Metcalf, his highlights. So it's a couple-minute video, and, it was labeled DK Metcalf highlights, but in my eyes, it was all about the QB, and we know who it is, dropping dimes. I think that he's going to be great for us, and I think that 8-9 is probably about right, but with a couple of, lucky things going our way, that could be easily, 10-7, 11-6. Anyways, love what you do for the nation. Shout out to you and to Ari. Keep it going and go Raiders.
Richie Rich, thanks so much for the call. Jack Besh, I immediately thought of Hines Ward because of his toughness. Crabtree was tough, there's no doubt, but Ward, much tougher. I can even think of Anquan Bolden for his toughness. Remember how tough that dude was? That's who I look at when I look at Jack Besh. I'm thinking tough dudes like that, guys that don't mind going over the middle and not only worried about getting a hit, but also worried about laying the wood. Right? Guys like that, guys that don't mind the blocking, guys that don't mind getting in their physical. I feel like that's what he's going to bring to the table. As far as the, 8-9 first year, something I've been talking about quite a bit, that's fair, right? And really base that off of what Pete Carroll's done in his career. He's never had a season where he lost, he won less than 7 games. I mean, that's again, proof of concept. Talked about that early on. I feel like that's reasonable expectations. Of course, we'll get the schedule drop next week. So we'll know exactly when the Raiders play, where they're playing. We know their opponents now, but we'll know the exact schedule when their bye week is, so we'll get a better idea, even though we'll go through the predictions, and they're always guaranteed to be wrong. But I just think we'll get a better idea then. So, we'll find out sooner rather than later what our real gut feeling is. But I do think 8 wins year one with Pete Carroll are very reasonable expectations. Thanks so much for the call. Appreciate you. Up next, got a text from Raider Tommy in Santa Monica. It says, hey, Q, I'm going to shoot my feeling on the upcoming season. We're going to have 10+ and open people's eyes. I know the AFC West is crazy good, but we could take them. I've been a Raider fan since 74 and pretty much got my feelings right on them since the Ruggs tragedy and Gruden messed up, made for a harder reset. Now I believe we're real again. Thanks for reading this, Raider Tommy from Santa Monica. Peace. That's a little rich. 10+ wins. That's a little rich. But the thing about it is, if they are an 8-9 team like I think they are, all you need is a couple games to go your way, right? I mean, even the year that they made the playoffs in 2021, the last year they're in the playoffs, they had like every ball bounce their way towards the end of the season. Whatever they needed to have happen so they made the playoffs actually happened. So as much as I'm saying 8 wins, that's fine. But if you get, a couple bounces to go your way, a couple calls to go your way, a couple wins that you don't expect to get, maybe even early in the season, AFC teams, whatever the case may be, it can happen. It can definitely happen. Hell, the Chargers just won double-digit games in year one under Jim Harbaugh. So I'm definitely not going to take that away from them. I just don't want to set the bar too high and then have a letdown when it's all said and done. So that's why I'm trying to temper my expectations. And even that's come into questions at times. But thanks so much for the text. I definitely appreciate you. Up next, got a call from EP in Seattle calling to ask about a position group that was not addressed till late in the draft. Here he is, EP in Seattle.
Yo, Q, it's EP in Seattle. Hey, man. While we did address almost every need that we had in some capacity in that draft, one of the ones that I thought going in was linebacker, and we didn't touch that till the 7th round. So it does seem we're still thin. Curious what your thoughts are on our current linebackers, and especially curious your thoughts on Amari Gaynor. I had high hopes for him last year. They stashed him on well, I don't know if he actually got hurt or if they just kind of stashed him on IR, but I think he might be someone who can make an impact. I'm curious your thoughts, if you think they expect anything from him this year, or if it's too soon to tell because we still haven't seen him on the field. Hey, man, I appreciate everything you do. And selfishly, I want this question answered because even though I spell a little differently, Gaynor's my last name. So wouldn't mind getting that jersey if he figures out a way to ball out. Thanks, man.
EP, thanks so much. I want to call you EPMD, but EP, thanks so much for the call. And it's funny that you brought up the linebacking room. I had a discussion on my radio show the other day about the linebackers and maybe veterans that we're not talking about, and Amari Gaynor was the reason for that. I saw that video floating around on social media where he was going through linebacker drills, and I kind of forgot, like, man, he had a lot of high expectations. Remember in preseason, he showed up, and we're like, man, he's going to make an impact. There's going to be some point. I said that. I remember saying that on my radio show. Ari even said, he was like, there's a clip somewhere of you saying, some point this season, Amari Gaynor is going to make an impact. Well, he didn't. He only had 5 tackles, right? He had 5 tackles. I mean, he was available for 17 games, but he only had 5 tackles. He's mainly a special teams guy, so he wasn't really. But to your point of the fact that they didn't really address the linebacking room, something I thought that they were going to do earlier in the draft, and they didn't really do a whole lot in free agency except for let a couple guys go. And I know they brought in Elandon Roberts. That's cool. I know they brought in Devin White. That's cool. But Devin White's a guy that I think is going to be, fighting for a roster spot, period. But they've got Gaynor. They've got Bernie. Right, they've got Tommy Eichenberg, the 5th-round pick from a year ago. Right, I mean they really could be more comfortable with the linebacking room than we have been talking about. Right, we may have just kind of overlooked a couple guys. Gaynor could end up being a big-time difference maker, because he was there, he was ready, he's been there with Patrick Graham, so he kind of knows what what the expectations, what the defense is. He might end up being a guy that we're talking about in a major way. Obviously, you still got training camp and preseason. We'll find out then, but he could end up being a guy. And for your sake, I hope he is. That'd be great. So you can get that jersey and then be representing your last name and Amari Gaynor out there on the field at the same time. But thanks so much for that call. Definitely appreciate you. Got a quick text here from CJ in Georgia. Hey, Q. CJ here from Georgia. Love your show and your takes. Someone just mentioned in a call he liked last year's draft class. Can you give your opinion on expectations for these players year 2? That's CJ in Georgia. Thanks so much for that. Well, we know the first 3 are hits, right? And obviously Brock Bowers is a home run. But JPJ, Jackson Powers-Johnson, year 2, healthy, fantastic. I think he moves to center. He'll be great. TJ Glaze, wherever they put him, he could end up being the starting right tackle like he was the majority of last year. I think he'll be just fine. I think he's going to get, some more reps under his belt, and he'll be good to go. Those are really good picks. DeCam Richardson, he might end up being someone. The good thing for him, even though he didn't have a good year his rookie year, the 4th-round pick out of Mississippi State, he got a lot of reps. You can't teach reps, even if they're not great reps. There's something about being in the game and learning, being thrown into the deep end and saying, hey, man, you better learn to swim. Even if you don't swim well, even if you're not Michael Phelps, but you know how to swim, you feel confident. And confidence is key. So if you have the confidence, you can go into training camp this year and be like, you know what, I've been there, done that. I got this. Ja'Corian Bennett wasn't very good his rookie year. He was fantastic last year until he got injured. His biggest thing is going to be staying healthy, right? But he wasn't very good his rookie year. DeCam Richardson has got the size. He's got the speed that Pete Carroll loves. He easily could end up being a real deal guy, but he's got to earn it in training camp. Eichenberg, right? Really a special teams guy, or the 5th-round pick out of Ohio State. Dylan Lobby, I thought he was going to have a bigger role last year. He's probably going to be a special teams guy. Trey Taylor, that's a guy, the 7th-round pick out of Air Force, a safety. He could end up being someone. He was a special teams guy once he came back from IR last year. He's a guy to keep an eye on as well during training camp. I think that Trey Taylor has a lot of natural ability. There's been a lot of folks that represent Air Force that have said that he's got some real deal ability and he could be someone. So watch out for him as well. But, I mean, the first 3 picks were so good last year, and obviously Brock Bowers being the best of all 3. So thanks so much for that text. Definitely appreciate you. Up next, got a call from Raider X. He's calling to talk about the excitement of what the Raiders have done and are doing. Also talks about competitions at some spot on the roster. Here he is, Raider X.
Yo, Q, this is Raider X. Wanted to talk a little bit of Raider football. Man, I'm really excited, and I really want to talk about all this insertion of talent, enthusiasm, and just professionalism and expertise on and off the field, in the front office and on the field. And I want to talk about the competition of where do you see and who do you see as the biggest areas of competition and surprise challenges or cuts of some of the, maybe a veteran or some areas that you think that might be on the way out or possibly for a trade out because of the insertion of some of these guys out there. Some of the areas I think that I see that are obvious is the Raider backfield, offensive line, the defensive line, and the receivers. Also, if there's any areas, going into even the front offices, you see they're reworking some of the executives and some of the scouting areas, anybody that possibly could be on the way in or way out. It's just crazy on how the change in the overall culture. You can see the transition so fast. I've never seen something so quickly. And then also, I don't know if you got a chance, last but not least, the conversation by Rich Eisen about Pete Carroll and the overall classes that Professor Pete Carroll does over at USC and some of the impact that he can have as a total on the youngsters. Everybody's talking about this old man. It's not the body that speaks, it's the mind. And this man is a genius and a guru in making everybody the best that they can be. And that's what coaching is about. I'd like to get your thoughts and feedback. Look forward to it. Raider X out. Raider.
X-Man, thanks so much for the call. Appreciate you. The excitement level's warranted, right? I mean, it's just what I started the show with. It just feels like everything is falling into place the right way. Obviously, they've got to go out there on the grass and do it. But I'm telling you, even coming back from the draft, even at the draft, everyone was talking to me, kept saying, Q, man, the Raiders are having a really good draft. I really like what the Raiders are doing. Ever since I've been back from the draft, everyone I talked to, hey, man, did the Raiders really have that great of a draft? I keep hearing everyone say how great their draft was. Like, there's a lot of people, and they're not just saying that just to try to pacify me, because they can give a rip about how I fail anyway. I mean, these are the same people that, man, what are your team doing? Your team stinks, right? So I do think that there's a lot of excitement that is warranted for what this team is doing. Again, they've got to go out there and make it happen. Rich Eisen was very impressed with Pete Carroll at USC. I'm actually trying to get Rich Eisen on my radio show. His show is aired on Raider Nation Radio 920 right before JT the Bricks. So I've reached out to him. I've had him on my show before, trying to work out a time that we can get him on so he could talk about that. I'll probably bring that to the podcast if and when I get that deal done. As far as competition goes, I think Tyree Wilson going into year 3 has got a lot on his shoulders. I think he's got a lot of expectations that he's got to live up to. He's got to show why 2 GMs ago they selected him at number 7 overall, right? He just hasn't been that guy. I think he's got a lot of pressure on him. Dylan Parham, I mentioned the offensive line earlier. I think he's got to go ahead and prove why two GMs ago, right, selected him in the 4th round, and he's been a mainstay on the offensive line since then. But, now Pete Carroll is bringing in new staff, new offensive line coach, right? They're going to seems like the zone blocking scheme. They're going to do a lot of that. Is Dylan Parham going to be, big enough to be able to make it happen and athletic enough at the same time to be able to fit in the scheme? I think he's got a lot of work to go and improve, and a lot of competition that he's going to have to fend off at that spot. And I mentioned before the cornerback across from Jacorian Bennett. There's not, it's not like a guy's going to get cut, but they've got a lot of guys that aren't proven to be that dude. Can DeCam Richardson be that guy? Can Eric Stokes be that guy? Can you get that guy from Porter? Where is that guy going to come from across from Jacorian Bennett? That's that's the other competition. Those would be the top 3 spots that I'm looking at. The cornerback across from Jacorian, Dylan Parham, and Tyree Wilson. I think that's going to be a lot of competition for sure coming up in training camp. So thanks so much for that call. It's always good to hear from you. And we'll close out with a text from Elb Trippin from SoCal. So what's up, Q? First, I have to say thanks for your grinding and providing quality content throughout the offseason. You make the morning walk with the dog that much better. Prior to the draft, I had to warm up the idea of taking Genty, but by the time we picked him, I was hyped, or at least I thought I was. I just watched Max's and JPJ's reaction on Max's draft day pod, and these dudes were hyped. They were begging for this pick, and when they got it, they went off. That glimpse inside the impact Genty has had already has really showed off. Hype versions of JPJ and Max are bad news for the rest of the league. So let's get hype, Raider Nation. Elb Trippin from SoCal. I'm the same way. Don't feel guilty. I had to warm up to the idea of Ashton Genty at number 6 as well. Anyone who's listened to this show knows I questioned it many times. I wasn't sure if that was the right decision, if they should go in another direction or not. But the closer and closer we got to the draft, the more that it made a lot of sense. Even people on here on this network, the Locked On Podcast Network, when we did the mock draft and I made the pick of Ashton Genty, like, I don't like that pick. Okay, that's fine. That's cool. But the dude is a big-time difference maker. He can help this Raiders offense. They only scored 18 points per game last season. If he can help them get anywhere close to 24, right, and have that kind of impact, and you heard what Max had to say about the offense in segment number 2, if he can be that guy, that difference maker in Chip Kelly's offense, I'm all good with it, right? I don't know how his career is going to go. Obviously, we don't know that. He's got to stay healthy. Obviously, that's a tough position, very physical, but he's a tough dude. He's very physical, right? So he's someone to get excited about. And again, like you said, if the team is excited and fired up about him, then why shouldn't I be excited and fired up about him? So it's a really good text. Great way to close the show, kind of drop the mic on him. So again, I got Max Toscano. He's going to be on my radio show at 3:30 Pacific time this afternoon, talking about that Raiders offense, why he believes they could be a top 5 or even push for top 5. His words, not mine. Right, he said top 10 and push for top 5. So those, again, were his words, not mine. We'll talk to him about that. plus more. And so if we get some good stuff from that, I'll bring it to the podcast as well. But until tomorrow, Raider Nation, we'll obviously have more calls and texts. We'll have more news and notes and plenty of conversation here as we continue to roll throughout the course of the week. So until then, Raider Nation, take care of yourself, take care of your family, love on your family. Most importantly, as always, just win, baby.